Now, I tend to live my life by the philosophies of Taoism, but I also tend to be a little bit more scientific and logical minded, particularly in matters of the body. And finding a balance between these two ways of thought, it's been challenging at times for sure, but it's led me to a much greater understanding of how what we are doing in acupressure works. My first big breakthrough in understanding exactly how acupressure works physiologically speaking, it came when I studied anatomy trains. A man by the name of Thomas Myers has dedicated his life to understanding fascia, and in doing so, he discovered something amazing. Tom conceptualized a revolutionary understanding of how muscles connect through a fascial fabric of the body. By merely changing the way that he dissected tissue, he discovered a clear new map that directed force transmission through the body's fascial fabric. Now, fascia used to be thought and called simply sinews, and nothing more than just wrapping around muscles. We now see it as much more. Fascia transmits force and energy from muscle to muscle. Myers says the whole connective tissue matrix is one single net. All of the divisions you find in the books, and even the separation of each of the anatomy trains themselves, they are all made with a knife from a single, indivisible whole net. The whole is real. Any division is conceptual. And if we look at images of the anatomy trains side by side to the meridians, we see an almost exact overlap. For example, here's a picture of the lung sinew channel, and here's a picture of the deep arm line, as described by Thomas Myers in anatomy trains. Look how closely they line up. The anatomy trains function to transmit mechanical energy, also called mechanical force, through the body. For example, when you run, the force of your body connecting with the earth is then transmitted through all of your tissues. If it did not, then every step would be jarring and incredibly painful. In a healthy system, force is transmitted correctly, and there is no pain. If there is an interruption in this transmission of energy and force, that's when a problem occurs. Let's take a moment and appreciate how similar this concept is to meridians and qi. Both ways of thinking believe that an interruption in the movement of energy leads to dysfunction. The main difference is in the explanation of exactly what happens when we do our work. Based on what we learned in the previous lecture, we understand that it is simply qi that's flowing or not flowing that causes dysfunction. And by stimulating acupoints, we help move qi. However, a deeper understanding of physiology can help us create a more substantial, longer-lasting effect. It turns out that there's about a 70% overlap of myofascial trigger points and acupoints. Now, a myofascial trigger point, usually just called a trigger point or a knot, is defined as a hyper-irritable spot located within a tight band of muscle. Trigger points only show up in dysfunctional tissue, so 70% of trigger points are found where there are acupoints. This means that by knowing the precise location of acupoints and knowing how to stimulate them properly, you can create a more considerable degree of change. What then differentiates acupressure, say, from trigger point therapy? Well, primarily having a clear map of what points to use and when to use them. By studying acupressure, you can also locate these points of dysfunction with a much higher degree of reliability than within trigger point therapy. Lastly, in acupressure, we use many different methods of manipulating the tissue to restore the ability of transmission of force and energy. While trigger point therapy is very useful and helpful, there's a limit to what will be done simply by pressing on trigger points. We also need to look at what happens chemically to the body when we perform acupressure. Now, to be honest, the same chemical changes occur within almost every form of massage. But understanding the chemical changes can help us know how to get more substantial systemic effects. Humans are tribal animals, and we evolved in close-knit groups. During our entire evolutionary history, touch played a very important role. So important, in fact, that evolution gave us a system that rewards us whenever we receive gentle, caring touch. During all forms of massage, our bodies are flooded with several different mood-altering hormones. Endorphins, these are the body's natural painkillers, and they increase your general sense of well-being. Dopamine, which is often called the feel-good hormone because, well, it makes you feel good. And serotonin, which is found in abundance when we feel happy and in a good place. These three hormones do more than just make us feel good, though. Together, they help our entire nervous system communicate more effectively. They help regulate sleep. They aid in digestion. They help in memory and focus, and so much more. On top of that, it's also been shown that by stimulating very specific acupoints, there's a decreased activity in a part of the brain that's involved in self-referential thinking. This region is called the default mode network. This region of the brain is the same one that gets turned down when we meditate. By understanding how to find these points precisely and manipulate the tissues in new and novel ways, we can assure more optimal results. Whether we say that we're moving qi or stimulating neurovascular bundle to create a systemic response through the pathways of neurotransmitters and hormones, the result is the same. The client feels relief from their pain and they move closer towards health. Either way we look at it, through the lens of traditional Chinese medicine or from the lens of modern anatomy, we can see that there are pathways in which energy flows through the body, be it energy described in TCM as qi or mechanical energy described by modern science. When we take this into account, we begin to understand how when we treat a shoulder problem, we must work on the distal areas that are connected and they're related to the shoulder, as well as the shoulder itself. This is one reason why acupressure is so effective. Again, we treat the body as a whole. Ultimately, the practice of acupressure and meridian massage is designed to treat the physical body by identifying locations where the flow of energy, mechanical force, is interrupted. By applying pressure and other techniques with intention and attention to specific points of the body, we help our clients on many levels. We typically only think of working on the physical body. However, when we understand that the work we do affects hormones and the nervous system and the brain, we begin to realize that we're doing so much more. We can release old postural holding patterns. We can help emotions move more smoothly. And of course, we can relieve pain. Let's end then by defining clearly what acupoints and meridians are. For our work, we're going to describe meridians as pathways through the body that are consistent and predictable from one person to another, that transmit force and energy. An acupuncture point is then going to be defined as a specific point found along a meridian that has local effects and affects distal parts of the body, which when stimulated with precision leads to pain relief and systemic changes in a healthy direction. All right. Now that we have a good understanding of exactly what we're doing and how it works, let's now jump into it.